How's it going, everyone? It's Holly from Snowstorm. Today is January 21st, 2021, and I thank you guys for watching this video. As today, we're going to primarily focus on the major United States snowstorm that could bring up to a foot of snow throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by first taking a look at the European model 126 hours from now, and you see that in the European model, we have a 998 millibar low pressure system located just right around the Ohio River Valley, and it's bringing a large area of snow extending from the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic states, and all the way to the Midwest. And you see that there's some heavier bands of snow, as you can see, and this has a potential of not only dumping a pretty big amount of snow, it also has a chance of dumping concerning amount of ice throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast states, because there's going to be a point in the atmosphere where there's going to be different temperatures at different levels of the atmosphere, where the mid levels are going to be slightly above freezing and slightly warmer than what the temperature at the surface. And when that's the case, that usually results in freezing rain threat, and this is what's currently forecasted by not only European but the GFS. Are both leaning on bringing some sort of ice, even when their position and timing of this storm is currently very different, as I'll show you in a little bit. But you see that there's a large swath of snow for the European. If we move a little bit further back, you're going to see that the snow extends through the Midwest. So for those thinking that this is mainly going to be a Great Lakes or Northeast stretch, you might want to think again, because this will extend to the Great Plains. Nebraska, Kansas will get involved, Iowa, and maybe even Missouri, depending on the track of this storm. If it moves a little bit further south, you could be talking about a lot more snow. And this is around 108 hours from now, just before 5 days from now. This is pretty much midday on Monday, right around 12 p.m. on Monday. And this is very different from what the GFS is saying when 108 hours from now, where the GFS is still further down in Texas, taking this low pressure system still further south and westward. So it's a little bit slower, which is a quite different variation, which is a quite different run from what we've been seeing from the GFS in previous runs, where the GFS was often a lot faster than the European. Now the GFS is slower, which shows that there's been a drastic change in the GFS forecast, and also the position, and in terms of snowfall accumulation, there's been a drastic change, as I'll show you. But now the European is a little faster than the GFS, and the reason why is because there's going to be a little bit more. The European is leaning towards a little bit more unstable air throughout the Great Plains, which will enhance the jet stream winds and make the jet stream winds faster to accelerate the European model low pressure a little bit quicker. So let's compare the two. You don't see much instability here, but around 120 hours from now, 5 days from now, there's a little pocket of cold air, and there's a pretty large area of cooler air which is accelerating which is creating that unstable environment for this storm, not only to strengthen but to speed up faster than the GFS. If we take a look at the GFS, you see that 120 hours from now, the cooler air is just not close enough to GFS to really enhance the jet stream winds or to really speed it up. And as a result, not only is the GFS model weaker, but it's much slower than the European model. And while you might think that might be bad news that it's slower, should be good news for now, because the GFS is taking a storm so weak that the slow pace of this storm won't really make a huge difference in terms of snowfall. And overall, the GFS currently is taking is forecasting much less accumulation than the European model. So this is what's making the forecast very uncertain, because both of the two of the most reliable computer models are still in very huge disagreements in what's going to happen. If we compare the radar for both the GFS and the European within the same time periods, you see that 126 hours from now, you see that the GFS is taking a decent amount of snow throughout the Ohio River Valley mainly and Missouri, and you see there's that ice threat I was talking to you guys about. But compare that to the GFS, I mean the European, where the European is taking much more snow just to the north of it, to a point where this could dump maybe it's forecasting over a foot of snow in some areas in the Midwest. So it's definitely expecting some major snowfall from this storm, while the GFS is taking a much smaller event and a much smaller scale event in general, where the snow band is a lot smaller. The area that's getting hit by snow is a lot smaller, and a lot of the places that the European is expecting to get the worst hit isn't even depicted as getting hit by the GFS model at all. So there's still huge uncertainties with the forecast. I wish today I came into this forecast with more certainty between the two most reliable computer models, but they've just been jumbled all around these two computer models. Let's take a look at the forecasted snowfall from both of these storms to really show you guys. So let's go 6 days from now. So 6 days from now, this is a forecasted snowfall from the GFS, and you see that for the most part for the Great Lakes region, it's mainly expecting around 1 to 3 to 6 inches. Nothing entirely major, nothing of what you're not used to in the Midwest and Great Lakes. And what's interesting is that the GFS is taking no snow along the mid-Atlantic coast now, after taking a lot more snow and up to maybe up to 6 inches of snow throughout the coastal regions of the Northeast. And the GFS is just the thing with the GFS now is that it thinks that the dry air is going to swallow it, and there's this big ridge in Canada that's going to move, that the GFS is expecting to be a little bit stronger, to the point where it's going to force a lot of that moisture further southward, and this ridge is going to be very strong but won't really bring enough cold air at the same time, to the point where it'll bring that cold air further southward to bring a lot more snow, as it expects the area of snow to be a lot smaller thanks to the ridge up northward. And this ridge in Canada will be the key in determining how much snowfall you'll receive, and also pretty much the lapse rate, because if the lapse rate is and if you don't know what the lapse rate is, it's pretty much the temperature at which you'll see condensation, the rate of temperature change within height. And it really depends on how cold and how dense and dry the air is, because the European is favoring the air to be cold enough, but also not dry enough, not dense enough to really just dry up this storm and weaken it like GFS is stating. So we just have to wait and see how this ridge builds up. It's going to take several days for the forecasts to iron themselves out. However, the European is taking a major storm, while the GFS is taking a very small scale storm. Let me show you guys the forecasted snowfall for the European model. Let me look for it in the winter weather category. You're going to see that the European is taking far more snow. Let me move forward 6 days from now, and the European, you see that in the darker reds, you're seeing over a foot of snow through Iowa, and this extends just right around or just north of Chicago, where the European is thinking you guys will receive over a foot of snow from this storm. And the threat even extends to the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, where 6 to 12 inches is certainly possible for a lot of the Mid-Atlantic. But if I go even further, it extends a little bit more, where a good area of 3 to 6 inches is expected all throughout the coastal Mid-Atlantic states, and this includes big cities like Philadelphia, New York City, even Washington, D.C. could get involved, and a lot of Maryland and Boston could get involved. But the biggest threat that the European is detecting is in the Midwest. And I'll say, while there is uncertainty with the models, I think it's pretty much guaranteed we're going to see at least some short snow in the Midwest. How much and where exactly, so has yet to be seen, because the European and GFS are just still in pretty big disagreement on how much snow. For the GFS, if you're around the Iowa and Great Lakes region, it's expecting mainly an area of mainly in the range of 3 to 6 inches, while for the European, it's 12 to 18 inches. So there's a huge gap there. And when it comes to the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, the Mid-Atlantic coast is expecting no snow from the GFS. However, the Mid-Atlantic coast for the European is expecting 3 to 6 inches of snow and even more in the interior Northeast. And the interior Northeast is a little more certain because the GFS is also taking a good area of 3 to 6, so maybe over 6 inches in some areas in the interior Northeast. However, for the Mid-Atlantic and a lot of areas, and in terms of the exact snowfall, it's still very uncertain between these two computer models, and we just need to wait and see how this ridge builds up, how dry that this air will be, how cold this air will be, because that'll be huge in determining how much snow you guys will receive all throughout the Mid-Atlantic and the Midwest. I wish I could give you guys a more reliable forecast, but the computer models are just in big disagreement. Typically, the European model is slightly more accurate than the GFS, but really their reliability and credibility is neck and neck. So it's still very difficult to favor the European so much more over the GFS model, since the GFS is still a very reliable model that could sometimes be right over the European model. But so we just need to wait and see when it comes to the snowfall forecast. And in terms of the timing of this for a lot of the Midwest, let me show you guys the forecast. For a lot of the Midwest, this should reach you guys right around day 5, right around Monday. It should begin late Monday. It should begin snowing in Kansas, and pretty much throughout Monday in the Midwest, it should be the main threat. And then Tuesday, it should mainly be around the Ohio River Valley and affecting the Great Lakes if the European model's forecast is correct. Let me show you guys the radar for the European model, the enhanced European model, the high-res European model, I meant to say. So let me move forward to 120 hours from now. And by 120 hours, this is very early Tuesday. You see that the snow is extending all throughout the Great Lakes. It's bringing heavy snow to Chicago, and we're seeing snow right around Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, and it's right at New York City's doorstep by Tuesday. So for a lot of you guys in the Northeast, it should primarily be Tuesday to maybe Wednesday threat for a lot of you guys, depending on which model is correct, and that's still highly uncertain. However, with the GFS, while this initial snowstorm is currently expected to be small scale based off the GFS model, what's interesting is that behind the GFS model, there comes a much bigger and much more potent storm just 2 days after the initial snowstorm I was talking to you guys about, where we see a pretty hefty area of unstable air, which could induce a strong low pressure system moving up the East Coast and bringing in even more major snowfall threat for the Mid-Atlantic. However, I'm going 7 days out. I don't want to make any big forecast assumptions when we're talking about something 7 days out. If we take a look at the European, see what it's saying 7 days out, it also predicts a little bit of instability, but no real major East Coast snowstorms just yet, although it does develop a low pressure after this initial one, but still a lot of uncertainty. And I just wanted to point it out that if the GFS model is correct, then there might be a higher chance that an even bigger snowstorm comes on the backside of this to bring even more snow to the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast states. So we just need to keep that in mind headed into next week. But here's my current snowfall forecast, And pretty much when making my forecast, I pretty much decided to mix the European and the GFS's models in terms of the snowfall forecast. And I've also went with a little bit of experience with this. So the more reliable model is definitely the is slightly more the European. So I leaned a little bit more to European, and especially since it's been slightly more reliable. So you see that for a lot of the Northeast, I'm expecting heavier snow. I don't want to specify how much snow because, like I said, there's still a lot of uncertainty. This forecast could completely change. Where the place where I put heaviest snow, there's a possibility you might see barely any snow from this storm. While I do think it's mostly certain you'll see some sort of snow in the Midwest and the interior Northeast, there's still a lot of questions of how much. And if you're in the blues, then it becomes highly uncertain how much snow you'll see because it ranges from maybe up to a foot of snow to maybe no snow at all. So we just need to stay tuned. However, based off with me mixing the GFS and European models snowfall forecast, we come to around this conclusion where heavier snow is expected through a lot of the mid-Atlantic, and this extends as far south as Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and as far north as Boston and Maine. And throughout the Midwest should experience heavier snow, and then light snow just to the south of it, just north of the Ohio River Valley. And then the heaviest snow, and I would say the most certain you guys will receive snow, is throughout the Midwest, extending through Iowa, the Great Lakes, and the interior Northeast. But still a lot of uncertainty. I want to emphasize that because both the most reliable computer models are taking completely different solutions, which makes it difficult to really give any sort of forecast with certainty, especially when we're 5 days out. So I want you guys to keep that in mind and don't take this as 100% truth just yet. Let's look at the Futurecast Radar to see what's going to be the thing that will form this upcoming storm. So there's a little bit of low pressure that's going to move through the western half of the United States. And this low pressure, while it won't be the same low pressure that will move through the United States and bring the snow that I've been talking to you guys about through the Midwest and Northeast, it will be the same one it's gonna be the one that's gonna bring a pretty big jet stream dip through the western half of the United States and form a new low pressure that will be the low pressure that will dump a lot of snow in the Midwest and the Northeast. So we just need to keep in mind of how much instability there will be to see how strong the storm will be headed into the Midwest and the Northeast. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day.